Caddis Maximus here again. This time I'm just doing a quick review of the apparently older style of DeWalt screwdrivers, manual screwdrivers that is. When you look these up online, it's just pretty much all you get is results for cordless and electric tools. And DeWalt recently has been, well, I shouldn't say so recently, but in the last few years have been making quite a bit of hand tools that they're not as commonly associated with being a power tool company, such as screwdrivers. I recently saw, and I didn't know it, they're not stocked at a lot of places, but a whole bunch of DeWalt air tools now, DeWalt socket sets. It's been kind of interesting. And I was looking up the part numbers. I'll include the part numbers on these. They do have them lightly laser etched on the shanks, and these are chrome vanadium screwdrivers, but it appears that even this series has been discontinued. And trying to find the new generation was kind of difficult. And on MSC, I found a 4-piece set that were just black and yellow with all rubber grip handles. And it looked like they were stuffing in their long extension hex impact bits instead of using custom blades, which I thought was interesting. But they were difficult to find, and to tell you the truth, it was surprising to search these part numbers on Google and just not having a real hard time just trying to find these things. It just seemed a little strange to me that these are like the really oddball kind of DeWalt screwdrivers. So that's kind of why I'm making this review, so people can have some information if they see some old stock at some stores or maybe see some at a pawn shop. Anyway, these DeWalt screwdrivers, I kind of like the earlier generation ones just because they have red and blue handles to designate both red for flathead and blue handle for Phillips. And that does appear to be a standard, not just DeWalt, but like such as these Pittsburghs. It's also red for flathead and blue for Phillips. So I do appreciate them trying to follow that standard. They do say chrome vanadium on the shanks. We might just be able to see that. There you go. Yeah, you can read that. So they're not too bad. One thing I'll mention is the tip is pretty good on these screwdrivers, but the corrosion protection, surprisingly enough, isn't so great. I've had these floating around for a while. I've left them outside, but not rained on. This, humidity, and we got some corrosion right there. And surprisingly enough, on this flathead, this got a little bit wet. It was left in the grass for like a couple of days. It wasn't a big deal. But when I picked it up, I was real surprised to see, what looked like nice chrome plating being so thin that it just really developed a lot of cancerous rust. And I thought, that's kind of surprising. Usually you have to have a screwdriver, getting wet for years in a truck toolbox, not just a couple nights out in the lawn where it wasn't even rained on. So that was a little disappointing. The other thing I was going to mention about the Phillips is it does have a good tip shape, but people have been mentioning this Japanese industrial standard, and I think that's where the screwdriver tips here are a little bit more squared off. And these taper, they do grip pretty well, but you do need to make sure to have quite a bit of pressure or the screwdriver wants to slip like most other Phillips. In comparison to, say, the Harbor Freight Pittsburgh professional screwdrivers, they're also tapered, but they are not as dramatic, and these do seem to grip pretty well. Now, I'll have to say, when I found the 4-piece newer set on MSC, it was $31 for a 4-piece set, 2 sizes of Phillips, 2 sizes of flatheads. That works out to almost $8 per screwdriver, and they're definitely not worth that as compared to the Pittsburghs. You can get a whole set of these for whatever it is, $15, $20. I think that's a much better value. One thing that the Pittsburghs don't have is the squared off handle, and I kind of like that. People like the triangular shape or the squared shape because when your hands are slick, they tend to give you just a little bit better of a grip. Another thing I will mention is that the rubber overmolding does seem to be pretty durable, although I'm not quite so sure how well it will hold up against automotive fluids. Automotive fluids, brake fluid, that kind of stuff is known to melt away certain types of rubbers and rubberized grips, and it's just something you have to be aware of. Some automotive fluids are solvents to certain types of plastics and rubbers, and it's just, the way it goes. Anyway, I kind of like these screwdrivers, and after I found these in a tool bin at a pawn shop, and I was actually, this was probably a couple years ago, And I've always been kind of satisfied. They've been, great kind of, put in a tool bag that you take places, and or in the car. And besides the corrosion issues, I was kind of disappointed because I don't really like the newer ones, and I didn't realize how much DeWalt was charging for them. But here's a look. They do put serrations on their flatheads, and then they have like a little, I don't know if that's supposed to be a type of heat treatment or something on the very tip. It seems a lot of screwdriver manufacturers like to put coloring on the tips of their screwdrivers. But the serrations are nice, and I do appreciate that. They do help grip a lot more when you're using it as a small prying tool or actually working with flathead screws. And that is one distinct advantage over the Harbor Freight flathead, is the Harbor Freight does save some money by not rolling in those serrations, even though they are still chrome vanadium. And probably the last thing that I'll mention is the ergonomics are pretty good. DeWalt does work, reasonably well at ergonomics. And even though these Harbor Freights are nice, they do have a straight handle. One thing I've noticed, I like their rubberized grips that they have. They have a couple different types, and it is comfortable the way it's rounded. But what I do notice isn't so much the square handle, it's just this diameter. When you start to hold a screwdriver like this, where the handle kind of tapers back down, of course, on your hand, the back fingers are smaller diameter, can grip a smaller diameter than your longer front fingers. And you really notice that in these screwdrivers. They really fit really comfortably in your hand because you have a small neck down area, you have a wider area right, where you normally hold it with your larger fingers, and then it tapers back down again. And it really does feel good. You really do have a nice purchase on that, really nice grip. And so that is another advantage, and I wish Harbor Freight would have spent a little bit more time putting a little bit more attention to that kind of detail. And it's surprising, but when you do grip screwdrivers that have this kind of shape, you really notice that they are just a lot more snug, and you can really just wrap your hand all the way around it like such. When you're grabbing normal ones, you can see where I have a much larger finger gap, so I'm just don't have as solid a grip on them. So anyway, that was just a quick review of these DWHT series of screwdrivers that seem to be kind of rare and hard to find online, and seem to be kind of like the Craftsman's, where they're, I wouldn't say the Home Depots, but I see these at all sorts of more local types of, farm supplies and hardware supply stores. It seems to be where these DeWalts really showed up. And I was kind of sad to see them go because I, really did think they were a decent screwdriver, but I just didn't think it, at least compared to the prices of the newer ones, they're definitely not $8 a piece screwdrivers, but they are still pretty decent. So if you can find a few on sale, I would say definitely pick them up. And I wanted to point out some of the features like those grips, the tapered grips, which means more than you think if you really are using hand screwdrivers pretty often. Anyway, that's the end of this review from Catus Maximus, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. And to all of you who have subscribed, I really appreciate it. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.